911, what's your emergency? A man's voice, hoarse and panicked, cut through the line. I'm on Route 17, mile marker 43. There's a guy out here just staring at me from the road. I think he's following me. The operator responded quickly. Sir, stay calm. Can you describe him? I don't know. He's tall, in a hood. He doesn't even move when I drive by. Please send someone now. A faint, rhythmic tapping echoed in the background, like fingers against glass, before the line went dead. Evan Harper had been driving trucks along Route 17 in Vermont for 6 years. It was a lonely stretch, lined with dense pine forests and miles of darkness, but he liked the silence. After a divorce that left him broke and alone, he'd taken the night shift to stop thinking, just him, the radio, and the endless asphalt. His old Freightliner was his home. Its sleeper cab, cluttered with coffee cups and a flashlight always tucked in the glove box. 3 weeks ago, he'd started noticing something strange at mile marker 43. A lone, bent, rusty road sign marking an abandoned dirt path into the woods. The first time, a tall figure stood there, motionless, in a dark hood, right at the edge of his headlights' glow. Evan flashed his high beams, but the figure didn't budge. He drove on, brushing it off as nerves, though his gut told him otherwise. After a few nights, the figure appeared again. Same spot, same hood, but now closer to the road, maybe 10 yards from the asphalt. Evan slowed down, trying to catch a glimpse of its face, but the darkness swallowed everything except the silhouette. He called his buddy Mike over the radio, laughing nervously. You ever seen some creep standing at 43 in the middle of the night? Mike replied, Nobody stops out there, Evan. It's just woods and old rumors. The next morning at a diner in St. Johnsbury, he overheard an old driver mention mile marker 43. People vanished there in the 80s. Cops found cars, never the drivers. Evan dismissed it as superstition but started locking his doors. A week later, the tapping began. It was late, around 2 a.m., as he passed mile marker 43 like always. The figure stood there, now just 5 yards from the road, its hood hanging low over its face. Evan sped up, but as the sign faded in his rear view, he heard it, a faint, rhythmic tapping against the passenger window. He spun around, heart pounding, but the window was empty, just black forest outside. Bumbling with his flashlight, he shone it out, nothing. Just silence and pines. He told himself it was a branch in the wind, but the sound returned the next night, louder, like fingers testing the glass. At a rest stop, he checked the window and found a thin scratch along it, as if something sharp had scraped across. By then, he saw the figure more often. Not just at mile marker 43. One night it stood at 41, another at 45, always on the edge of his headlights. He took a detour one evening, but passing an abandoned gas station, there it was again. Same hood, same stillness, right in the middle of the road. He swerved around it and floored it, but in the rear view, it was gone. The next morning, he found a note under his wiper, scrawled in jagged, childish letters. You can't drive away from me. He tossed it and called the cops, but they said Route 17 was too remote for a patrol at night. An older constable pulled him aside. We call him Mile Man. People have seen him since the 70s. Stay off 43. 2 days later, Evan read that the constable had vanished. His cruiser found empty at mile marker 44. Panic took hold now. One night, the tapping came from inside the sleeper cab while he drove. Short, hard knocks against the roof, like something was up there. He pulled over at a crossroads, shining his flashlight around the truck, nothing on top. But when he looked down, a dirty Polaroid lay on the ground by the tire. It showed him sleeping in the cab, snapped through the window, his face pale in the flash. He jumped back in, locked the doors, and drove for hours without stopping. In the rear view, the figure stood at the roadside, hood tilted like it was staring right at him. The radio crackled to life unprompted. Evan? His own voice, faint and warped, echoed through the speakers. A few nights later, he found an old map in the glove box, not his, with mile marker 43 circled in red and a handwritten note. He always sees you. Evan drove to an abandoned barn at mile marker 46, desperate for answers. Inside, a pile of newspaper clippings sat on a rotting table, stories from the 80s about drivers vanishing along Route 17, all last seen near 43. One blurry photo showed a tall, hooded shape by a road sign, unmistakable. Beneath it, a note, "Mileman waits." As Evan turned, a low, guttural laugh rumbled from the barn's corner. He swung his flashlight, nothing there, just a thin wisp of smoke curling from the shadows. Finally, he couldn't fight the fear. He parked at mile marker 43 one night, flashlight in one hand, a wrench in the other. The figure stood there, closer than ever, just 3 yards from the truck. Evan yelled, "What do you want?" No answer, just silence and the hollow eyes under the hood. He blinked, and it was gone, but a cold hand gripped his shoulder from behind. He spun around, nothing. The next morning, he found a new Polaroid in the cab, him standing at mile marker 43, the figure right behind, a long arm reaching for his neck. He called 911 in a frenzy. 911, what's your emergency? I'm on Route 17, mile marker 43. He's here, he's standing behind me now. Evan screamed, his voice breaking with terror. A low laugh bled through the phone, followed by tapping, like nails on metal, before a shriek tore through the night and the line went dead. Police arrived 20 minutes later at mile marker 43, but Evan was gone. His truck sat there, engine still running, door unlocked. A blood stain had dried on the driver's seat, and his flashlight lay shattered on the ground. Inside the cab, they found a Polaroid, Evan, screaming at the camera, with a tall hooded figure clutching his neck. Residents along Route 17 swear they hear tapping from the woods at night, and some have glimpsed a shadow at mile marker 43, still in the moonlight. A local driver said his radio crackled one night with a faint voice whispering, "Evan." He quit driving after that. Route 17 is quiet now, but mile marker 43 remains. A filmmaker visited the spot and found an old cassette in the ditch by the sign. When he played it, there was only static, then a low, guttural laugh that wouldn't stop. In his next video, a shadow loomed in the background by his car before the clip cut off. On his phone, among the last photos, was a notification, 2 missed calls from Route 17. If you like this story, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel.